Before we tackle layout today, I'd like to talk about background images for a few minutes and then move on to layout, because I'm sure many of you will want to incorporate a background image. They're easy to apply. So let's show you. I'm going to take this duck image and show you the pros and cons of using background images and give you a heads up on things to look for. What I'm going to do is take the duck image and I'm just going to copy it. Or I don't even need to copy it. I don't know why I did that. But what I can do is I'm going to go to Modify Page Properties. And you'll notice over here I have a place under Appearance. This is Background Image, and we can browse for this. So what I'm going to do is click and browse, and I want to just look in my image folder and use the duck image, the duck dune JPEG, because it's already compressed, it's small. Choose, and when I apply, watch what happens. It repeats. By default, background images repeat. So that can be a good thing, because if you want a wallpaper-like feel, then you only need a teeny tiny image and it automatically repeats over and over again, and you have a small file size for it to download, and you have no problems. On the downside, the problem we have with this is, it's a design factor, is that when you have a background that's this dominant, it's hard for anything to be visible on top of it. So I would be cautious. So there's a couple of things that you can do. One is that you lighten it up or save it as a JPEG, but just as a transparent file. Could be a JPEG, and you know that you can't have transparencies with JPEGs, but it will lighten it up. So what do I mean by that? Let me click OK, and I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to open this file in Photoshop. And we're going to change it. I'm going to try to open it in Photoshop and change it. Let me just open here. Let me do this. Let's look for Lauren Miller 2. And then let's look at images. And here is the Duck Dunes JPEG, and I'll open it in Photoshop. And while we're in Photoshop, I'm going to show you some other ideas for backgrounds. If you want, like on my website, if you want an image to take up the entire background, a single image, one thing that I would recommend doing is making it much larger than the 800 by 600 that we've adopted for the page format. And the reason I say that is because even though we can specify that this will not tile, and that's what we're going to work on next, is that someone with a large monitor, when they expand the browser to fit their screen, they will see the edge of it. Does that make sense? When they pull on the right, they click on the right here and it expands, or let me just show you. It'll be easier. So you can see with this, if I expand, this is the size monitor I need to adequately see this entire page. If I look at the one on my website, specifically my personal website, if I click on Home here, okay, notice how this feathers out. Okay, the way I have chosen to deal with a smaller image is that I've blurred the edges so that I don't get a crisp edge, but this gray background is a part of this image. So for your page size, you will need something that's at least 800 pixels wide by 600 pixels deep. But my recommendation is that overall, for a background image, you pick an image that's 1600 pixels wide by 1200 pixels deep. A GIF or a JPEG or whatever proper, I wouldn't save it as a PNG, they just tend to be too large. That will be adequate. And then what you can do is, instead of what I've done here, if you have something that will easily scale, then when you crop like here or here, it doesn't really matter, it still looks complete. What you're doing is you're determining in the upper left-hand corner, that's what is going to be visible, and anything outside of that, if it is visible and it still works, that would be ideal. I got this turned back on, so it is changing every minute or so. I've got my video camera turned on my laptop, so it automatically updates the image every minute. I had that turned off for a long time, but anyway, so it is a live update. So, and one of the things that I've done for the background here is made sure, and you always have to do this, make sure that whatever dominant value exists in that background contrasts with the text that you're using. So if I have a light background here, the dark gray or black text will work on top of it. The logo here is intentionally light, so not much contrast. I didn't want it to bowl the viewer over. But the text on any of this reads pretty well, whether it be in the dark or the light. Another trick that I've used to make the background a second reading, and there's a variety of things that you can do, but one of the things is to blur it. I mean, that was intentional. By blurring it, it kind of puts it, it makes it a second read, and all of the crisp, sharp images, including text, are a first read on top of it. So that's another thing that you should consider if you're planning on a large background image. Okay, having said that, let's work with the small background image for a second here. Okay, so what I can do is go ahead and double click on this so it's no longer a background layer, and change the opacity of it like so. And it really, even just 20%, it doesn't look like much here, but when we save for web, where are we going to go here? Save for web and devices, and save it as a JPEG. Notice how it's tinted out now. It's really light. So anything that you put on here, on top of it, will read just fine. So if I go ahead and keep that a JPEG, it only takes 2 seconds to download, and that would be with a 56K modem. Save it, and I'll save it in the background, and we'll call it for background. Okay, going to make sure on my desktop I find the appropriate root folder, put it in images. Just like all the other images, you need to make sure that it's saved properly. Now I come back and go to Modify, and we go to Page Properties, and I swap this one out with the other one. Choose Apply. And notice how it still looks pretty crummy, but at least the text reads pretty well. Now, something else we can do with a background image, and this is pretty nice, and this is once, a couple versions ago, once Dreamweaver started to embed or build in cascading style sheets. You'll notice by default it repeats, but it doesn't have to repeat. I can come in here. Let me go ahead and switch back to that other image so we can see it better. You'll see what I'm doing here. Apply. So instead of repeat, I'm just going to say we could have it repeat along the X or the Y, or we can just say no repeat. Apply, and we have a single image in the background. Again, be careful of the placement, because whether it repeats or it doesn't, if it holds a dominant spot on your page, anything on top of it, this button reads okay, I suppose, but still it's competing with the image. Okay. And what we can do too is we can specify the margins. So By default, anytime you place an image, it shoves it in the upper left-hand corner. But we can go ahead and I can say, you know what, I want this 300 pixels over from the left, and from the right, I'll just leave it that alone. And from the top, maybe 200 pixels down. And let's go ahead and apply. And why aren't we doing it? Come on, come on, come on, come on. Huh? Did I blow it? Why aren't you doing it? Let me go ahead and refresh this. Maybe I should save it and refresh it. Let's preview it in the browser and see what we get. You can move it over. Now why it's not, I'm not sure. And that's what I want to make sure we do. So I did something wrong. We can move that image anywhere you want in the background. It can be left in the upper left-hand corner. It can be centered. It can be pushed over to the right. We can do whatever we want. So why am I having trouble with it? The other thing that I wanted to show you is that if you want, you can add this to Cascading style sheets. So let me go back again and go to Modify, Page Properties, and see for appearance, no repeat, margins. Okay, well then let me take this away for a minute so that, let's do it a different way. I blew it. Modify page properties. That's still there. Okay. So let's try this. Let me bring up Cascading style sheets. We have a lot of them here. Here's what I want to do is I want to change the body tag. And that's where we should be able to change that. And that then you'll notice that these divs are part of the style now. And if I export them and I put them back in when I redid the layout on this. But to add a background, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the body tag here. And it says no repeat. Let's go ahead and select it, and let's go ahead and edit it. No, I don't want a new one. I just want to edit the style. Okay, so it says no. There we go. So why it's not in the other and it is here now, we have the horizontal position and the vertical position. So now I'll go ahead and I'll do that. 300 over and 200 down. I don't know if this is going to be right or not. You can apply it. Now you can see that it's placed there. And that's where it will be permanent. And we can export that style. We can add it to our style sheet. But remember, if you add it to your style sheet, anytime you apply the style sheet, that's going to be, you'll have the background image as a part of your page. Okay? So what other kinds of backgrounds can we do in Photoshop? Sometimes people like gradations. And this is where using the repeat really helps a lot. So I'll go ahead and apply that, and we'll leave that alone. And then I'll probably remove that tag, and I'll have to remember to do it. But I need to go back to Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to create a brand new file. And the file that I'm going to create is going to be, if we were going to do a large image, it would be 1600 by 1200. So why not? I'm going to go ahead and do 1600. I really don't need it any deeper than 1 pixel, but just to get an idea of how this is going to look in the background, I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. So 1600 by 1200. This is for a nice, really big monitor. 1200 pixels, white background, and we'll call it gradient background. Click OK. big file, you know, 5.49 megabytes. Wow, let me go back again. Image size. Make sure that I have this right. Yeah, 72 pixels per inch. That's what I want in pixels. Okay, so there we go. I think I've got it right. Big file. But we don't need one that big. So let me go ahead and let's pick a web safe color, and I can go from foreground to transparent. So it goes from foreground to background, or it could be 2 colors. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and click here, and let's make it this kind of salmon color. And then I'm going to use, instead of the fill bucket, we'll use the gradient tool. Instead of the salmon to the green, I'm going to go salmon to transparent. So it'll go salmon to white. Okay. And for example, what if I had all of my, I decided to have all of my links over on the left. And so this would be a nice backdrop for those, and then it would fade into my image. So if I click and I drag, and I hold down the shift key to constrain, and I want it to end right about here. See how it fades over? Okay. Do I need to save this whole image? No. The only thing that we need to do is we need to come over to selection. And you'll see that we have single row marquee, either for horizontal or vertical. Well, this is a horizontal gradient, so I only need to use the horizontal marquee. And you'll see that it stretches on here, and it doesn't matter where I place it. 1 pixel deep by 1600 pixels wide. And that's pretty cool. So now what I can do is I can copy this, Command C for copy, make sure I have it here in the move, Command C, and then File, New, and we'll call this background gradient. Okay, 1600 pixels wide, 1 pixel deep, and I click, and then I paste. Now, it doesn't look like much, but if we zoom way in, you can see how the gradient goes across from that salmon color to white. So now what I need to do, it's now still fairly large. It's not that big. It's only a 4K file. But now when I compress it, it'll even be smaller. I mean, it's teeny tiny. So now I can go File, Save for Web and Devices. See how small it is? And because it is a gradient, I probably want to save it as a JPEG, high quality, fine. I don't need progressive because it's so small. It will take less than a second to download, even with a 56K modem. Click Save, background gradient, make sure it's in my root folder. Okay, let's come back. And now let's go ahead, and I need to take this tag and remove it. And I just removed something else. Oh, there we go, remove the background. There we go. Okay, let me go back to modify again, and I can either apply it to this style, add it to the style sheet, or we can just go for the individual page. We can go ahead to modify page properties. And I'm going to select my background image, browse, and here's the background gradient, and I choose and I apply, and notice what we get. Because it automatically tiles, it repeats that 1 pixel over and over and over again, and I get the gradient. Now, if you had a monitor that was large enough to span larger than those 1600 pixels, you would see it repeat. Chances are most people won't see it. It just does. It's the nature of the beast and background images for the web, that when you place an image, you must have maybe missed the first couple of minutes, that anytime you put in a background image, it will automatically tile. Even if you have one big 1600 by 1200 pixel image, it will tile. If you had a large 30-inch monitor, and a handful of people have those now, if you stretch the browser to fit that entire screen, it would start to tile. But by using cascading style sheets or specifying no repeat, it won't. So here's another trick. If you wanted it, instead of a horizontal gradient, you wanted a vertical gradient, we could do the same thing. Just reverse the gradient, reverse the single pixel image, save it as a JPEG, and you're set to go. A very efficient way for applying a gradient to a background and using almost no memory at all, and having it load really, really fast. It's a nice little trick. It's an old trick, and it can look very effective. It can look really, really nice. Okay. Are there any questions on gradients? Or not gradient, background images. And on another day, we'll use the tracing image. And it's the same principle, but tracing images they're part of your file, but they do not upload. And that would be useful today. I'm going to show you some of the basics in layout, creating divs and cells within layout. Because right now, we're in design mode. And up here, we can look and use standard, and we can switch to expanded. Click OK. And what I want to do, let's hide this for a moment. Let's look back. Oh, that's Photoshop. I don't want that. Let me quit that. I don't need to save that. Don't save. Don't save. I don't know what I'm doing at the moment. Let me open another page. And instead of continuing to work with this one, let's work on the About page for a minute. Okay. Okay. So what I want to do, I'm going to make sure I got this right. I should probably just switch over. That's fine. Hold on 1 second here. Expanded. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I see. What do I want to see? I want to see almost all of this. I want to see invisibles. I also probably want to see that I already have the grid visible. Snap to grid. Grid settings can be changed. I have rulers visible. That's good. Okay. Code. Okay. Hold on here for 1 second. I think what I'm going to do instead of doing this, because they do a much better job, I'm going to switch to lynda.com. to do the layouts and to apply cells. I'm thinking here. What I should do. What to do, what to do. I'm just going to stop my video, and I'm going to do the lynda.com. And then we'll come back and I'll review it, because he will explain it better than me, and then I can review his review. So I'm going to stop the video, play the lynda.com, and then when we're done with it, then I'll come back and sort of repeat what he's done. Maybe expand on it a little bit.